So welcome, Peter. This is session number 8. We had signed up for 9 sessions, I believe, and I
Yeah.
know you have a lot to talk about. So I'm going to just let you kick this off, and yeah, let's get going.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. Long time to see. I think our last session was about 3 months ago, so quite a long time, and a lot of news to catch you up on.
Mhm.
And yeah, as always, I have some bullet points taken care of and prepared. Um, I think I'm gonna switch more than usual
Sure.
through them, but yeah. Yeah, I expected you to start off the session with how have you been? You didn't, but I prepared some nevertheless.
Peter, hold
Um,
on. Can I interrupt for a
yeah.
sec? How have you been?
Good. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, great.
Um, yeah, it was a lot of news and a lot of new topics in the last past few months, and I feel like I'm quite burnt out. That's why I've taken the this week and next week off from work to catch up on personal stuff and yeah, relax a bit. Um, yeah, it was quite a rough patch, but I think especially last month. It got better, and I got into a routine that is providing me with some stress outlets, some yeah, better personal life, better time management, and yeah, it's getting better, but too slow for my taste, if you ask me.
Yeah. So first, I want to ask, what led to taking the vacation? Was it a realization that I just can't keep up at this pace anymore? Was there a moment that happened where you just thought, I'm too stressed? What led to that?
Um, it was another way around. So in Germany, we have 30 days PTO,
Mhm.
which you can scatter around the year, and we do this starting the year. So I got my plan in March this year, I think. And I planned 2 weeks vacation for this November, so around this time. But as soon as the house project started, I was considering shifting those 2 weeks into the next year to have more free time to renovate and yeah, take care of the house.
Mhm.
And I think 3 months ago now, we decided to still take this November vacation because it was too much of a gap between our last vacation and basically the new year where my next vacation was.
And
And
just to be clear, when you say too much of
yeah,
a gap, do you mean like country requirement of too much of a gap or your
no,
personal requirement?
my personal.
Okay, gotcha.
It was, as I mentioned, the new role, a lot of stress through work, and yeah, it. I needed the vacation, and I was happy I had the 2 weeks still planned for me myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I wrote, as you talk, I read some questions or notes to
Yeah.
myself, and I do think you're sort of butting up against the limits of what you can do. And I don't think this is like, at least old Peter would have thought this is a problem. I need to be able to do more. And I
Mhm.
don't think it's a problem from that point of view. I think it's a problem from the point of view of you can't operate at maximum capacity for very long stretches of time. So I think it's good you're taking a vacation. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's what the big. I think I had quite some revelations in the past few months, and one of them was you can't give 110% every day,
Yeah.
and this is something which is quite new to me, and I'm still struggling in some areas. I have some notes and questions prepared for you, but it is something I'm more aware of, more reflected over, and I'm talking about this with my colleagues, which is quite revealing as they struggle the same um, in some areas as myself. And yeah, it's not perfect yet, but I think I'm on a track where it is getting better.
Okay. Good to hear. Yeah. I want to say something quickly, actually, which I was
Yeah.
debating on saying it all. But, I find that when I talk to other people in tech, I do find that my problems are not usually too unique. It's
Mhm.
things like, oh, hey, there are tons of tasks, or there's too much to do, or I'm stressed about this. And to some extent, I almost feel like tech jobs that pay well are just going to come with some of those stresses. And I don't know if you caught the interview I did with Sharon Lowe, but she said that almost it's like the tech industry isn't sustainable to some extent. It's like we keep trying to squeeze more out of people, and yet productivity is raising. We're doing more than we ever have. These companies are making ludicrous amounts of money, and yet how is it that the workers are as stressed as they are? So anyway, it's good that you're talking to your colleagues about this, because I think that's, at least knowing you're not alone can always have some power to it.
And my colleagues, especially my manager, is quite he's seen more than myself, and his perspective is another one, more on the eyes on a sustainable career, and it's it helps to talk about.
Yeah. All right, so I'll let you steer the whole meeting pretty much. So yeah, go on to whatever you
no
think
worries.
is good next.
All right. I think those points I've talked about. Yeah. So another thing that I think helped myself, which I wasn't expecting to help this much, is as I mentioned, with my new role, a whole bunch of us got promoted into this manager position, and we are not a team yet. We are in some meetings together, and we talk about stuff, but we have no team spirit. And I think that is something we are cautious about and working towards to build, which didn't happen for the past 4 months. And I think it's refreshing, and it is something to look forward to, and helps in those situations.
Yeah. What are these kinds of things you're talking about for team spirit?
From totally basic stuff like what is your idea, what your role has to offer, or what you're required to do, you can talk about personal stuff, and basically rant for 5 minutes about something that is bothering you, and
Wait, is this, hang on one sec. Sorry, is this with just the managers that you're sort of talking to each other? Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. So my other question was, prior to 4 months ago, what had happened in terms of team spirit, but you wouldn't have known because it was just for managers. So for all you know, they had a system.
And with my promotion, there was a really big restructurization on the manager level. So even if there were team building events or something in the team spirit realm, it wouldn't carry it over.
I see. Okay. And then, so you and your colleagues, if you say that you're all at sort of this layer, is there anyone at the layer above you who's listening to these meetings who could do something about these rants, let's say?
Yes, and I think it's their fault that it took so long to start building this team spirit, because everyone was cautious about what they are saying. But I think there were quite a few one-on-ones that mentioned this issue to them, and they reflected on this, and it changed a lot of their meeting culture and how they lead meetings, which helps. Yeah.
It does. Also, there's just this point of view. I have a very kind of dumb example of this, but I've been hanging out in a different Twitch stream from what I normally do. They have a lot of viewers, and I'll sometimes make a joke, and then like there'll be 5 or 10 chat messages that sort of play on that joke somehow. And I'm like, I influenced the flow of chat for some time. Yeah. You were doing this in a much more meaningful way, which is that you're starting to change the culture of your team. How does that feel to you? Do you feel like you've got an impact, that you're actually taking more leadership responsibility?
I don't credit myself too much for this, but it's. I don't know how much I influenced directly. I mentioned it to my manager, and he was the one changing the meeting culture, which helped. So I have some credibility in this, but it's nothing I'm crediting myself for.
Okay, I see what you're saying, and I'm not going to try to argue this, but you at least had a small part in this, and there are going to be lots of things that as a manager, it's sort of hard to fully take credit, but that you certainly moved the needle, you pushed things forward. So anyway, kudos to you for talking about this stuff, being open, joining these meetings, and just watching this change, because it is empowering to see that you can influence things even in a minor way. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, let's talk about more career things.
Sure.
I have three big topics. Let's start with the obvious one for me. I mentioned to you that my 24-hour days are too short, especially my work days, which are basically 8 hours. And I'm way more selective which meetings I attend now. If I'm not directly added and required to attend those meetings, I try to stand away from them. It's not always working, and some of them are good reasons for them. Basically, your presence as a manager is required in some of the meetings, even though you are not directly named.
Mhm.
But yeah, I have way less meetings in some, but I have way more important meetings in my mind. But I don't know. Do you know the quote "busy is the new stupid"?
I've never heard that. No.
Okay, I don't know where it's from. I heard it a while ago. But I'm worried that those uh, my day is still packed with meetings.
Mhm.
But since I'm more selective of them, I feel like it's important to attend them, and I'm worried that I'm only I'm the meeting guy now. I'm only doing my work within those meetings and not working outside of meetings. And I'm not sure if this comes directly with my new position, or if this is my new procrastination way of doing still meaningful work, but yeah, deprioritizing some other tasks.
Yeah, well, I was going to say there are two potential problems with this at a high level. One is that you're not prioritizing correctly, and the other is that too much is expected out of you. I don't think you're not prioritizing correctly. And at some point that if there is too much expected out of you, it's either you somehow rise to meet this, you don't do all of the work, or they hire more people. Those are pretty much the only options because like you said, you can't keep operating on 110% all the time. So just keep an eye on that because like I said, at a high level, it's got to be kind of one of those things.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed that I'm neglecting some tasks I know that are expected from me. So basically, answering emails that are directed at some mailbox I'm able to see, and what I don't try to neglect is my direct reports.
Mhm.
Those are my highest priority. That is what I'm setting myself up to. And even if I have to scratch some meetings, I those are my highest priorities.
Yeah.
But I know that there are some tasks within my direct reports I should attend, which I'm not because I have too few hours to make them work.
Yeah. Okay. There are a couple of components to this that I would say. One, it's okay if you're not initiating some of this contact with your direct reports,
Mhm.
as long as they know that that's the case. Because think of what it's like when you sort of first shifted in this role or when you first started at the company. A lot of people need the validation of like, this is normal, here's how things work. So is it clear to them that this is not a failing on their side or that, oh, Peter must be paying attention to more to other people?
I think so. I have an open roomed meeting, which basically every one of my direct reports has and can join into this meeting. And if they have something on their mind or yeah, might want to raise to me, that would be the option. And those meetings are quite rare attended. It's not that they come every day, every time, but only a few handful of people have used this meeting.
Well, so wait, this is what I was going to comment on. It's good that you have that, but I think if you were to take any selection of 50 people just
Mhm.
randomly across any of your career, there's going to be 40 people who never go to that sort of thing. And
Yeah.
and those people are the ones who need to know that hey, nothing is wrong from my point of view, but if something's wrong from your point of view, please do raise a concern whether or not you come to that meeting or you email me. I think they need to know that's a route.
So how many times would you remind them of this? I had a first getting to know each other meeting, and I had the first round of official employee interviews and yeah, one-on-ones with them. And I mentioned that in those meetings to every one of my direct reports.
Yeah, I think as long it's like there's no hard and fast rule. If I were to tell you, hey Peter, please don't be late to these meetings. If you need to be late, just reschedule ahead of time. I told you once like a year ago, and it's never been a problem. So I'm pretty certain that you've got it at the top of your mind. If you're also confident that these people know, yes, if I have a concern, I can reach out. Or if you ever see that it goes too far, as in they say, look, I wanted to talk to you about this 2 months ago and I didn't know how, that's an indication that, all right, now you may need to make it clear maybe once every 6 months or 12 months or something. So as long as you're pretty confident that they know, then yeah, that's all that needs to be done.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm pretty confident.
Okay.
Yeah, I am.
Okay. So let's see. Let me read the rest of this though. I know most of them are doing fine. Some of these. Oh yeah. Okay. So this is the last thing though. You said there are some issues that you know require your attention. If you don't have the time now, and you know that these issues exist, will there ever be the time? Are they like medium priority? What's going to happen with those issues?
I think they would eventually get fixed, either by some other manager in my area or my level, or the direct report itself, themselves. But it would take longer than when I would do it.
Okay. I wanna swap the roles for a little bit. You are any one of the direct reports you have. You've raised this concern to new Peter.
Yeah.
What would you want to have happen?
The answer is pretty obvious.
Yeah. Well, I guess let me say this. Even in this hypothetical where you're the direct report, you might recognize, yes, I'd like the manager to take care of this. If the manager said, look, you could do this yourself, but it'll take long, like, would you want to at least be steered in the right direction? As in, if the task would take you an hour, could you maybe take 10 minutes of your time and guide them a little bit better? Is that an option?
I don't think so. I think that is we are talking about weeks of meetings to do those issues. This my issue. If it's we are not talking about 1 hour. We are talking about several weeks of continuous work on this topic, both by me and my direct report.
Yeah. I see. Yeah. Well, I know what you said about the whole, yeah, if I were the direct report, to be clear what I want. I don't know the severity of this from just what you've said here. I don't know if it'll seem like them that you're sort of aloof or you're neglecting their issues. So in all cases where something is infeasible, I think communication is the answer. And because communication doesn't need to take nearly as long, you could say, look, this is on my radar. I'm sorry, I don't have time for this right now. I don't know when I'll get time for it. If it's incredibly important, here's a path you could take with another manager. Otherwise, I don't know, something along those lines where at least they feel heard, because you've already noticed the power of that. You talked to that direct report that you had that you were worried about originally, and they came to you and they just said, hey, I no one's ever listened to me, basically. And there's a lot to that. So yeah, I think at the very least, as long as they're in the clear, I'll write that down. Is infeasible communication can be the next best answer. Yeah. And are there any concerns about anything else with this sort of cluster of bullet points?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think I should sit down with them and talk about this. And I wasn't able to do this before my vacation, and hence it's weighed up on me while preparing those notes. Yeah, it was good to talk about, but yeah, it affirmed my suspicion I had to speak with them.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah.
Okay, so A relatively big change in topics for now. So I mentioned to you that I'm a manager, pretty much the lowest manager in my whole corporation, and our company is a child company from a bunch of parent companies, and I want to drill down on this hierarchy because there were some changes made upper in the chain, and I don't know how to react to this, and yeah, basically how to go about them.
Sure.
So my CEO of my company, which I will directly call and speak to, is a CEO underneath a sub CEO and underneath the corporation CEO.
Yeah.
So there are basically three layers, and all of them have the CEO title, and all of them have the basically the power to change the direction of our company.
Yeah.
And the sub CEO, no, basically on our company level, there are several other companies. I think about 20 other ones. And the sub CEO is the first manager that is directly holding accountable, hold accountable for all 20 of those companies. And those companies were pretty strong in automotive in Germany, and I don't know if you followed the automotive market. It pretty much escalated in Germany, and pretty much the IT development in Germany is pulled from Germany, which made about 14 of our other sister companies basically swim for money. They are struggling to reach their goals told to the corporation above.
Yeah.
And the sub CEO hence had to do something, and has released a bunch of new policies, ranging from which reports you have to take, and how many reports a year or month, basically. And this is the one that is affecting my current position, has released some new policies about hiring externally.
Yeah.
And we are currently in a position where our company, working for the public sector, is doing pretty well. So well so that we are turning down customer requests because we have no personnel and employees left to fulfill those requests from our customers. And hence, we would like to extend our employee workforce by about 35 new employees. But since the struggle of our sub CEO and the new policies, we are not allowed to hire new employees.
Yeah.
And this is frustrating on so many levels.
Yeah.
And I'm in a position where my direct reports mention that they are unsure, they are frustrated, and they are insecure how the corporation will uphold our company and what the future holds for them. And on the other side, I would like to basically hire new employees and lift some of this frustration, build new customer bases and new projects. And I don't know what to tell my reports, and I'm not sure how I would deal with this situation.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of thoughts here that I have. For one, I've heard this a lot in my career where I go and talk to a manager about something and they're like, yeah, I recognize it's a problem and I can't do anything about it.
Yeah.
And to some extent, you're bound to get that answer as a sort of leaf node employee. It's like, oh, hey, I don't like the culture, or I don't like the work pace, or something else. And it's like, too bad. That's the environment. That's the realm that we live in now. So from that point of view, it's factual enough. You're not the CEO, you're not the sub CEO, you don't have that sway necessarily. And yet it's also not a super satisfying answer. But I guess it at least shows to your direct reports that you are aware of their problems and you can't necessarily do anything about it. So it is sort of adding some information. Do you know the sort of mathematical definition of common knowledge?
No.
Okay, so sort of colloquial definition is just we all know something, but the sort of mathematical definition is we all know that the other person knows it, and we know the next level that I know that you know that I know it, and so on and so forth. So it's like perfect common knowledge. That needs to be communicated in order for you to be in that scenario. And that's what I think you'd do if you were to tell them, look, I recognize this. I can't do anything about it. So you are actually adding some information there, even if it doesn't seem like you are. With that said, I think this is the problem with the one size fits all policies. Your sub CEO is, well, let's go back a level. Your CEO is responsible for, it sounds like about 20 companies. Is that right?
No, my direct CEO is responsible for one company.
Okay, it's the sub CEO who's responsible for 20. Okay,
Yeah,
I
right.
probably wrote something down wrong somewhere. But then presumably the mega CEO is responsible for even more than 20. But this
About 500,
500, yeah. So this sub CEO, is there any path? I guess they don't probably put a lot of weight in any individual of the 20 CEOs that they manage. But is there any path to say, look, your policy probably makes sense for 18 of these 20 companies, but for mine and this other one, it doesn't. Is there any route of negotiating essentially?
I'm not sure. Frankly, that's the answer, and that's I think what's frustrating for me because I can't see what my CEO is doing in this one. It's I know they are talking with my CEO and the sub CEO are talking, and they are bickering about figuring something out for as a special rule for us because we are basically making money in this case. But since nothing has affected those policies in the last whatever 4 months, 5 months this has taken on, I don't see that it is changing anytime soon.
Yeah. Yeah, the difficulty here is without having visibility into this, it's hard to know why the decision isn't being made because from your point of view, it looks very clear. We can make more money if we get more people. Let us have the more people, right? But from the CEO's point of view, it might be we've told stakeholders that we're not hiring, which gives us a position of strength and whatever the optics of this. So it's hard to know. And the other consideration, which is unfortunate, but it's like, let's say you do get these 35 people and let's say your revenue goes up by 50%. That's 50% of 1/20th of the companies of one, whatever it is, 25th of the companies. So yeah, maybe they're just like, who cares even? So yeah, I think it's hard. What was I going to say as a result of all this stuff though? Yeah. So assuming that sort of doesn't work out, where do you see these frustrations taking yourself and other people? Is it to the point where you think you'd quit? Is it the point where you think, well, it's going to be hard to fight over work?
So we have quite the demographic in our company, and we are talking about succession management. So basically, there are people leaving our company in the next few years, and we have to get their knowledge into the hands of fresh people.
Yeah.
And we need to hire them sooner than later. And I see it as a big risk for our future of our company, and I think that is the same as expression is made by our direct reports, by my reports. It is hard to get those knowledge transfers if you have no successors of those positions.
Yeah. So here's a thought, and this is not a comforting thought, but these big companies are machines, and the machines are designed such that any person can leave and the machine keeps running. So without knowledge transfer, I know it doesn't sound great, but it's not like the companies will all just grind to a halt. It would just be harder for the people taking over to figure out what was done. And that's life, right? That's why they kind of call it the bus factor, right? One of those people who has all this information could get hit by a bus, and then it's as though you were playing out the situation where you didn't get more headcount. So, yeah, maybe that's not comforting, and maybe it is. It's like the inevitability of just people would have to learn how to do the job, and that person who has the knowledge figured it out in the first place. Yeah, I think this is what's tough though, is you're dealing with things where even if you could influence this, you're doing it through probably 3 layers of abstraction here, going through your CEO and then the sub CEO, and then possibly they're going to their main CEO, and who knows who else is being talked to amongst all of that. So I think it's probably sort of damage control and figuring out how to message this to the people who matter, including yourself, to get to the point where it's like, okay, I can come to terms with this, and I recognize that yes, we're not getting a new headcount. So if you feel stressed, just really prioritize your work and recognize you're not going to be able to do the least important 40% of it.
What I'm wondering about is what are my options here? So basically, I'm responsible for writing some reports that are summarized and summarized and summarized, but still get on top to our sub CEO in this case. Am I raising risks in all of this? Am I adding stress towards our numbers in response to those policies in order to mitigate some of the damages that might be introduced through those policies?
So I don't think I understood that. You asked about risks and priorities here with these policies. What sort of risks are you talking about?
Basically, we are a public traded company, and we have to manage risk on an basically stakeholder level, and every business risk has to be mentioned through a chain to our CEOs. And I'm wondering if this is concern enough to raise those company risks, as some projects might be cancelled due to lack of succession management.
I know what you mean. Yeah. So one, I can't talk about the sort of legal requirements of this. I think so here's my point of view without knowing this. Is this a risk that will put the company out of business? Like, no, it wouldn't. Would it prevent profits from rising as much as possible? Yes, certainly. For your specific company, at least. So I don't know to what level you report the risk, but and what is your responsibility here? I think it's probably just to communicate it to the CEO, who probably takes full responsibility for doing all of the publicly traded bits of it. So is your CEO aware that you could be taking on more projects if it weren't for this policy? Yeah. And then is the sub CEO aware that your CEO feels this way? Because like you said, it's been 4 months and nothing has changed.
I hope so. It's not my responsibility to follow up with my sub CEO.
Yeah.
I haven't met the guy. I don't know him.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you've done what you need to do. I think the only other part where your responsibility might come into play is communicating with your direct reports. But beyond that, really, there isn't too much else you can do. And it sounds like even if you were CEO of the company, there really isn't too much you can do other than have a conversation with this person, right?
Yeah, that's what's boggling my mind. I thought the whole idea of a CEO for a company is to decide which employees to take on and which not. And yeah, I wasn't aware of this, that our sub CEO has the power to influence our direct hiring processes like he has. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say this, and I think there are certain problems with working at any size company, right? Small company has problems, large company has problems. When you're sort of at the small to medium level, acquisition sort of becomes the problem, because it's like you get absorbed into a parent company and then get all of their culture and bureaucracy, and then maybe they get absorbed and you're witnessing this play out, right? So when you have too many levels of management, too many people, too many cooks in the kitchen, these problems arise, and who knows what's going to untangle these things, but it's not going to happen on a short time scale, and it's not going to be something you can probably influence without growing to the level of sub CEO or higher. So I think at some point it's coming up with, are you okay with this potentially playing out repeatedly in the next few years? Because with this case, it's hiring, but maybe in the future it's with, I don't know, whatever legal practices or trainings or who knows what.
I am, and that's I talked to my manager about this, and he told me, yeah, every few years, with some CEO changing, some new policies arise until they, basically have to be taken down again. I don't know. but yeah, I'm okay with this, as long as I know where my responsibility ends, and
Yeah.
that's where I'm struggling currently. I have a meeting 2 weeks after my vacation with my manager to talk about this sort of stuff. Um, but yeah, I think everyone tries to do the right thing, and you don't know what the sub CEO has for information to basically decide some of those policies. And
Yeah.
hence, yeah.
And that's what can be tough too, because if only we had everyone's perspective, you could then
Yeah.
analyze, does this make sense? But without it, it's always, well, I only know what I know. And this is called the fundamental attribution error. You judge yourself by your intentions and you judge other people by their actions. And
Hmm.
if you think about it, it's like, well, yeah, of course I know what's going on in my own head. So I'm going to judge other people by just what I see them doing. Anyway, I think that's why the core question I asked at the end is what's important, which is if this just kept playing out, would you be okay with it? And by the way, even if you weren't in this situation, the other thing you might run into eventually is politics, which is just, hey, you only have the one company in the mix, but still it's hard to convince people how to do things. And there is no strict authority structure to get that to happen. So I think at the end of the day, it's like, if you don't want this stuff, you just need to be your own boss. All other times you need to deal with everyone
Yeah.
else that's doing this. So just to touch on that last part, your responsibility, like I said, I think is to communicate up the chain, which it sounds like you have. It sounds like your CEO knows what the issue is, and then to address any of the concerns of these coworkers, or
Hmm.
well, coworkers and direct reports. And then
Yeah.
the only other thing I haven't mentioned before, so this is not just summary, is you mentioned the knowledge transfer of some of these people that you know are
Mhm.
leaving. Knowing that there isn't the headcount to hire new people, I would say that you do the next best thing, which is knowledge transfer to a knowledge base and not to a person.
Mhm.
So make sure that that stuff's written down, it's documented, practices are known, because a lot of this stuff, you do something maybe once a year that when you're right about to leave, you don't think about that thing you do once a year.
Mhm.
You're just like, oh, I've already transferred all the knowledge. I covered my day
Yeah.
to day. So yeah, you get the people who have to transfer knowledge to put it into a database instead of a person. Yeah. Well, knowledge base, I guess.
Mhm.
Okay, cool. Now you mentioned this next thing here of if we have enough time. We
Yeah.
have been going since 10:57, so we have about 27 minutes, I think.
Yeah. I would say let's keep going the career route and later talk about the personal stuff.
Okay,
I have one thing that is bothering me, and I'm not sure how to react to this.
sure.
Basically, we have so I'm the manager of a chapter that is called software development with focus on front end development. So
Yeah.
the company has tried to find all the front end devs and put them into my chapter so I can do basically training, skill management based on this suit and the needs of my reports and a more focus group.
Hmm.
And um, so I'm front end focus in my chapter lead role, and I'm the manager of people that are split across 4 different projects, and
Yeah.
2 of them started working with Angular about 4 or 5 years ago, and
Mm.
made the switch from a basic Fed client to basically web development.
Yeah.
And now is the time for one other big project to move to web development, and the management side of this is the decision is made. We are sticking to Angular because this skill is basically in our company. We know how to do it. We have the know-how. We can shift resources easier if
Yep.
we have all the tech stack, and we can reuse stuff that is already implemented. You know the drill. The basic managerially manager view on this topic.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I was trying to hire new web developers to support this project change for the new for this third project, and had really struggled to find Angular devs or basically any senior dev that wants to work with Angular or within those project requirements. And before the project started any Angular development, I asked the architects if they would still support the decision made by managers to use Angular in the project.
Mm-hmm.
And basically they returned with the statement, yeah, it doesn't hurt too much to use Angular. It's still good enough. And basically, they did a complete architectural decision record on ADR, and listed Angular as still what has to be done.
Yeah.
And my issue is, I'm not sure if I first trust my architects to want to use Angular, and second, where do I find new employees aside from the new policies released by my sub CEO? If I haven't found them the past 6 months, I'm not expecting to find them the next few months.
So
And I'm not sure how to react in this situation.
I have some thoughts here. One, you mentioned a while ago you'd like to eventually be CTO. And I wrote here that this is your time to flex. This is your like, I'm gonna act as CTO right now. And I have to say, your manager's points are valid. So they mentioned this bit about we have the skills and we have some of the code. And something I want you to consider, because this might be a new lens for you. You are a go-getter. If you were told there's some new, like the Foo framework that doesn't exist yet, and the company decided, you would go learn it. And not only would you learn it, you'd try to excel at it, and you'd try to do everything you can to be good at it so that you could fit into the job. Most people are not like that. And they want to like use the skills that they have. And I think you mentioned this. I think it was either you or Kyle, so I'm sorry if this is wrong, but one of you mentioned a principal engineer on their team who was frustrated with a new process that was happening. And I was like, how long have they been in the company for? Oh, a very long time. And I was like, that's it right there. So there are lots of people who are working who want to use what they have, and they are human resources. And if you were to try replacing them in this climate that you have where you can't hire new people, it becomes even tougher. So it's like, there are lots of reasons beyond just the face value of being able to reuse skills that is actually potentially the right decision to make.
Yep.
The other thing I was going to say here is that if you were to take a senior dev who does not know Angular but knows, the next best thing, maybe Vue, maybe React, they can learn Angular. They just wouldn't be an expert from the get-go. And if you find people who are motivated enough to go learn it to the level that you would want them to be at, because you can't find the people who already have it, maybe in the area, that could be a sufficient second choice. Just to find the people who can get the specialization that they need. So just what are your thoughts on that stuff? Because I know I said a few things there.
I agree with the perspective of my managers, but I think they haven't been in the market for a new Angular dev and don't know the struggles to get one. And if you are struggling now to find an Angular dev because all Angular devs are switching to React or Vue, then it is not gonna be get better in a few next years. And the project is large enough where I am thinking about the next 10 years and not the next year or two.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure how to weigh in this risk or this concern with the totally valid and good points by my other colleagues. And I would have hoped another statement from my architects in this project, especially in a world where React and Vue are. Look at this Stack Overflow survey they do every year. Angular is on the declining branch, and Vue and React is still on the uprising side of things. So I'm not sure if it is the wisest decision, and I'm not sure if we can now see what the risk will play out in a few years.
I have an extreme counterpoint, which is, and I unfortunately don't know a lot about this, but some banks still use COBOL, the language.
Yeah.
There are almost no COBOL developers, and yet they've somehow determined that it is worth paying these people a lot of money rather than converting, I don't even know how large of a code base, to something much more modern and gaining all the benefits that come with it. And like I said, I think on one end, that's on the extreme, and you're nowhere near an extreme on either end right now. Hang on one second. Sorry. You're nowhere near the extreme. Hang on. But still, there are these considerations to be made. And I think this is the politics situation playing out to some extent. Well, it's not quite politics. The architects have a different view and they produce that ADR that you talked about, which presumably you could go look at and see what their reasons were, right? Yeah. And you say you just don't agree with their reasoning, or you don't think they're taking in the full landscape of the situation?
I think they took the cheap way out and listed Angular as one of the possible options we could go, and React and Vue are on this ADR as other options that might be considerable if they have some benefit they didn't see. So basically they wrote there is no reason why we shouldn't use Angular, at least from the technical perspective.
Yeah. So I think, hang on, sorry.
No worries.
Excuse me. There are kind of two ways to look at this. One is the route where, let's say you couldn't fight this at all. How would you still make it work? And the way you'd probably make it work is by hiring non-Angular devs to learn Angular. The other route is to try to convince people to shift away from Angular, which, by the way, I think represents quite a lot of work and maybe something that you don't have the sort of resources to do as a company. And I think that's always the struggle. It's like, do we tackle tech debt and make our coders happier? Or do we make more features and make our customers happy? And yeah, this is one of those cases. So again, imagine that you're CTO and you see these problems playing out. It's hard to find new Angular devs, and the architects feel like Angular is still going to be good. You probably know more about the code base and how much would need to change, how much expertise across the company we need to change, how many trainings, how many just like, well, here was a way of doing things in Angular, now here's how we do it here. Who's going to make the components for these things? What would you recommend if you had control over this?
My gut feeling tells me Angular is not the wisest choice, and that is what is struggling with in me. I'm not sure if our company has the resources to fight Angular or switch away from Angular, especially with the new release policies from our upper management. So I would like to quantify this, and I can't, and that's my issue, I think.
Could you talk to an architect and say, look, practically speaking, we can't find Angular devs. Look at the Stack Overflow surveys, it's on the decline. One, could you talk to them? And two, what do you think they would say?
I can talk to them, and I did talk to them, and I think my issue is I can't understand the reasoning behind them. Everything I found online, especially the surveys on Stack Overflow, point to a different choice, and I am wondering why they did come up with Angular at the end.
Yeah. Yeah, well, look, let's say we were to assume that they are very competent and that they actually did pick Angular sort of correctly. I don't think that you're at the point where you could go wrong in either direction. Angular is still probably sufficient. I think it's a good enough option. And maybe if you were considering a timeline of 50 years, it might not be. But then again, maybe Angular gets popular again. And switching could also incur some costs that are unclear right now. Maybe it slows down your development cycle to the point where you now have sort of two projects ongoing. The Angular maintenance project along with the conversion project. The conversion might take a year or more for some of these things. So I think it's worth at least considering some of that. and I think it sounds like you've kind of done what you can. You talk to the architects, it's not clear. I'd say if it truly just isn't clear still, you might want to talk to them from the point of view of, look, can you pitch Angular versus React to me and tell me what the pros and cons would be? Maybe that could get you a little bit more out of them to at least, here's what I think would happen. I think it might give you confidence that your architects know what they're talking about and have considered it and just didn't put it into words because they thought this is a foregone conclusion. I've already convinced the people I need to convince. And Peter's talking to me about this. Just go look at the document, you know? So maybe that could work.
Yeah.
And maybe it's intensely unsatisfying. Maybe you find out they're like, React, I don't know what that is. And you're like, oh God, this is much worse than I thought. But I think that could be a good first step.
Yeah.
Pitch me Angular versus React. Best case scenario, you realize that they know what they're talking about. Worst case, what's React? Yeah. And I think you're at a level, you're getting to a level where more and more of these problems are going to come down to this. You might have a feeling for how something should be done, and it's just practically impossible to fight the machine of what is being done. And you make peace with it or you try to change it. It's the fight or flight, essentially. And sometimes you're going to want to fight it, and sometimes you just need to figure out, how do I live in this world where I didn't agree and not have that affect my day-to-day job? So this is one of the like sort of oblique strategy for getting to the point where possibly flight is like you're accepting of it. It's okay. So yeah, I do suggest doing that. Mm-hmm. Does that sound okay, by the way? Is that a different perspective? Okay, yeah.
Yeah, that is something that changed in the past few months since we last spoke. That is something that is new to me, and it's assuring that you have the same thoughts about this as I do, but I know with the policies mentioned as well, I am at a level where I'm not the one deciding, and sometimes you have to live in the world where someone has decided the sometimes worse option for you, and
Yeah. And I think if you were to have enough sort of bad options shoved onto your plate, that you might get to the point where you say, okay, I'm sick of this company. And I don't sense that you're getting to that point, because we even talked about the last topic and you'd said, no, I'm fine with this playing out for the next few years with the hiring practices and the CEO sublevels. But yeah, maybe you get to the point where you don't like it, and maybe, you know, you're the CEO at that point when you've decided that.
CTO, please.
CTO, yeah. So in those cases, though, you would have gotten such an amount of experience and perspective and insight. And the way I look at this is, every job you go to, you learn some technical stuff, this language, this technology, but then you also learn what you like and where your life is shifting you, such that the next time you get a job, you might say, I really liked the whole, well, I guess you're in Germany and get this anyway, but 30 days of vacation time. And I really didn't like this aspect. And you try to sort of pick and choose what is the ideal role. So yeah, I think you've got the right view on a lot of this stuff. And like I said, I do highly urge you to talk to the architects and try to figure out more of, do they know what they're talking about at least? And I just disagree, or do they not even know what they're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. I think that was all my career points I brought with me today.
Okay, sure.
So if you don't have anything for this, I would switch into the personal stuff. I don't think we need quite as much time there.
Okay, let me just take a quick look. Okay, yeah, I'm good. We got about 5 minutes left.
Okay. So I wanted to give you an update on the sailing license deal. So I went sailing again. It was a long weekend, Friday to Monday. It was a really nice sail with my brother and a friend. We met on a sailing cruise last year, 2 years back, and I mentioned to you the sailing license, and it was something that is bothering me and putting stress on my mind. And I think I found a way to deal with this. I set myself a deadline. If I do it, I want to do it this year, but I don't force myself to learn for this stuff. The interesting part about this license is I'm fascinated by the contents of the license, and either way, even if I start learning a few hours and decide not to take the pen up for the next few months, it wasn't something I would cry over or
Yeah.
be sad over, because it was still something I wanted to know and learn, and yeah, studying this because I want to learn this stuff and not studying for the license at the moment. And this had me. This was a realization after our last session. I don't have to get the license if I know how to sail. My brother has the license, and I think it was the competitive one in my mind that wanted to get this license 100%. And
Wait, whoa, hold on a second.
yeah,
Okay. I recognize that the realization didn't need to happen in the moment, but it wasn't a requirement. I thought let me just share what my understanding is first. So I thought the government was going to change the process such that it was going to take even longer if you were going to train the next time. And if you didn't have this license, you couldn't train other people to, I don't know, become licensed themselves or something like that.
yeah, right.
Okay. So
That is still the case, but since I'm on the endeavor with my brother together, and he has the license, it is.
Oh,
I'm not signing the paper, but he is in my name.
I see. Okay, so your brother went through just to be clear, the new process.
No, the old one.
Oh, you just didn't finish going through the old one because you know how to sail?
Right.
I see. Okay, I understand everything now. Gotcha. I was like, wait a second, this just came down to you being competitive, but okay, it's clear. So yeah, his brother would have been needed to license people for Peter, so it's not much of a loss. Okay.
And maybe I still do it, but it's nothing that is bothering me as much as the last time. And I think it's boiling down to what has given me stress, and where can I lift my stress for myself. And this license thing was one of them.
Okay, hold on. I recontextualize and process this now a little bit more. So you knew this though last time. You knew that your brother had a license, and you knew that he could do this stuff. I'm trying to think of. Hold on. So if you knew this, but you hadn't realized it was out of competition, and if I had known this, I could have suggested that. Oh, hey, you could just go this route, right? And then we could have identified it in the meeting. But yeah, okay, I didn't. All right, cool. All right, I'm on board.
I did not realize the option that my brother could be there for me. I wasn't thinking about the dependency there. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, I processed everything. I'm cool now.
Great.
So I see a very tiny picture though. Can I expand it?
Yeah, sure. Do it.
All right. Except for then I also got it.
It was the first sail in the night, and this was a night picture I took on my iPhone from the sailing boat.
Hang on a second. I'm busy breaking everything because I'm streaming and I can't just expand pictures and have it. It's too bad there's no way to just like open this in a new browser. But anyway, it looks gorgeous from what I can see.
And this was pitch black for the naked eye. It was
okay.
Yeah, it was stunning to see this image later on.
Wow. How long was the exposure set to for this?
I think it was 6 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, wow. Well, it looks great. Much scarier in negative color mode, which is what I have for Dark Reader. But very pretty when it's in positive color. By the way, I think your plan is good. Set the deadline for yourself and then stop worrying about it afterward. And I feel like in general, sort of worry, stress, anxiety, they do very little for us, except they can in small doses potentially be good for things, like, hey, there's a scorpion nearby. Don't get stung by it. Okay, great. Yeah. Worry about that. But yeah, don't worry about this stuff. And you have a backup route now, which is your brother signs these licenses. So yeah, I think it's good where things settled here. Actually, I think that brings us to time. So I would like to hear about more, but we do have another session planned, and I'll follow up with you about booking it. Oh, yeah, sure.
One last thing. There's a second image I mentioned to you. I put all my notes into ChatGPT. That's what Dali came up with.
Wow, it's you working and then you working some more. Who would have thought?
But with a pretty sailing boat in
With
the
a pretty
background.
sailboat, yes, in the background. I see. That is good. I will hopefully ask you about this stuff next time. And yeah, it's great though to hear. I'm glad your vacation's coming up. I'm glad you're sort of on the right trajectory on stress management too. So good talking to you, Peter, and thanks for the session. Thanks for preparing all these notes.
Thank you for your time, and yeah, have a great week.
Yeah, and you have a good rest of your night. See you, Peter. Bye.